please help me to introduce Saran, Kaur, Gill.
Thank you very much, Torsten. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when Arno first told me that I had the last session of the day, I actually told him, "Are you sure you want me to come?" And he said, "Yes, I can promise you there will be people to listen to you." So thank you so much for being here this evening. Much appreciated. I would like to thank the organizers, and especially Catherine Anderson, Carolyn Plewa, and Arno Merman for this privilege to share my experiences with all of you this evening. My first name, let me start with something cultural. My first name, if you look at the board, it's Saran. Saran comes from the Granth Sahib. You have the Bible, we have the Sikhs, the Punjabi Sikhs have the Granth Sahib, and it means sanctuary. And I never knew that I would work in my life, in a career that would provide sanctuary for so many people. I feel privileged and blessed to have done that. And my middle name, Kaur. All Punjabi Sikh women have Kaur to their name. So if you see Kaur, you know that that person is a Punjabi Sikh woman. And it means, does anybody know? You do? What does it mean?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I know.
You know, okay. It means princess. So, and Gill, of course, is my husband's surname, which I adopted after I got married to him. He's a wonderful gentleman. And all Punjabi Sikh men have Singh to their name. You know, these are men with the turbans, S-I-N-G-H. The root word of Singh is Singha. Singapura comes from the same word. Singha means lion. So all Sikh women have a lion at home, so you don't mess with them. Okay. The last time I was in Adelaide was at the University of Flinders 4 years ago. This was as the first Asian scholar invited by Engagement Australia to be part of their Visiting Scholars and Experts program. And I was on a lecture circuit to select Australian universities. It is great to be back here again at Adelaide to share my experiences with all of you. The area of industry and community partnerships is not new. We've learned so many things and heard so many interesting insights this morning and today. The difference lies in the way styles of leadership, governance systems, and implementation of industry and community partnerships are approached. Let's start at the very beginning of this journey. On the 1st of September 2007, the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia established a new senior management portfolio, that of Deputy Vice Chancellor for Industry and Community Partnerships. This was for 4 research universities in Malaysia, which included University Kebangsaan Malaysia, which translated means the National University of Malaysia, but known as UKM. The aim of this portfolio was to systematically and gainfully reduce the gap between the ivory towers and that of industry and community stakeholders. It was in this context that I was appointed by the government of Malaysia to be the Deputy Vice Chancellor at UKM. The appointment totally surprised me and created shock waves across the university. This caught us by surprise for 2 reasons. Firstly, I was the first non-Malay appointed to a senior management position. And secondly, I was a woman. This was because 10 years ago, senior management positions at public universities in Malaysia were largely held by those who came from the dominant ethnic group, the Malay community, and they were mainly males. Given that it was a new portfolio, there were no guidelines and no plans as to what needed to be done. It was time to be pragmatic and address critical issues for this new portfolio. The main question underpinning all of this was, how do you create the culture change needed to transit the university from a research academic university where the focus has traditionally been on research and publications to one that requires academics to reach out to industry and community partners, a very time-consuming exercise. After a couple of initial meetings at top management level, the hard reality began to dawn on me. I began to realize that there was going to be no funding allotted to this portfolio to create and implement the culture change needed. This portfolio was only given operational funding for the offices. I was told by my bosses to be creative with regards to the funding that I needed and to work at it. I was not in a position to wallow in self-pity. Getting over this shock, I moved on. One of the first things I would need to do to deal with this challenge was the style of leadership that needed to be adopted in this portfolio. How should one lead in this environment? Given that it was a supportive role that I had to play, I did not have clear lines of authority over any stakeholder. Instead, to obtain the buy-in and develop trust, I had to convince and persuade academics of the value of this field. I had to show them what we could do for them. It was not a situation of do as I say. Instead, it was work with us. And we would be able to add value and strength to what we will be able to do for you and society. The word that best describes the nature of leadership in this field is that of stewardship, which I've taken from a recent World Bank report. The Deputy Vice Chancellors of University and Community Partnerships have to exercise stewardship to coordinate and handle actors and interactions not under their full control, but critical to the performance of the sector. A leader in this portfolio needs to lead in the development of multi-stakeholder collaboration, and to do this, it is essential to be sincere, honest, have integrity, and have a self-giving. You almost have to do that every day so that academics have confidence in the steward. Having dealt with the nature of leadership, we now turn to working on something concrete so that we could create impact and visibility across the university and beyond. I thought of an endowed chair. This would create the impact needed, and if successful, would create positive waves across the university. The first step was the selection of a critical area. I noticed that regularly in the daily newspapers, there were articles and letters written on the impact of climate change. And I discovered within the university, we have a research center for tropical climate change systems at the Faculty of Science and Technology. The head of this research center was Professor Fridolin Tangang, who sits on the UN IPCC Committee on Climate Change. We started working on a proposal. We then looked around at the various industries, but made the decision to zero in on Sime Darby Foundation. This was because of Sime Darby's focus on the environment and the area of working towards sustainable futures for all. We then submitted the proposal to establish the chair in the area of tropical climate change systems to the Sime Darby Foundation. After negotiations, they were interested, so therefore doors were opened, and we had discussions and negotiations. And after a year, we successfully obtained 5 million, which is the minimum that we could get for a chair. The capital generated interest, which was used for supporting a chair holder who would help leapfrog the development of this area through research. Over time, the Sime Darby Foundation was very pleased with the progress and achievements of this endowed chair, especially with the positive visibility it provided the organization and the ability to contribute to national development in partnership with a reputable university. Inspired by the success of the first chair, the chairman of Sime Darby Foundation, Tun Musa Hitam, who was also our deputy prime minister at one period of time, sent out an invitation to 8 public universities, inviting them to submit a proposal for an endowed chair in the field of sustainable development. When the Vice Chancellor directed me to work on the invite, I spoke to the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering to ask if he was interested in working on this potential opportunity. He sounded hesitant. He said, "Prof. Saran, we already have a chair on climate change from the Sime Darby Foundation. Why would they want to give us another endowed chair?" My response to him was, Prof. Mazuki, he was a great leader for the faculty, but I told him, Prof. Mazuki, why are you letting them decide? If you are interested, let us work on it together and try our best. Why are you letting them decide before we have even tried? Prof. Mazuki was persuaded. He started checking out in the faculty on areas of research that dealt with sustainable development. He found out that in the Department of Chemical Engineering, we had academics who for quite a few years had been researching on the invaluable area of zero-waste technology for the palm oil industry. We had a tight deadline. All of us worked day and night on the proposal for submission. A month later, we were told that 2 public universities had been shortlisted and would present the proposal to the board of directors of the Sime Darby Foundation. UKM was one of the universities selected. The team was extremely motivated, but the challenge was not yet over. We now had to prepare for the presentation. I worked very closely with the team, got them to practice their presentations. It's not easy to get professors to do that. Helped them improve on it. I was very lucky that the professors were all cooperative and so willing to be trained. It had to be perfect, both in terms of the relevant and meaningful content and the delivery of the presentation. D-Day arrived and we made our way to the Sime Darby headquarters for the presentation. A week later, we were informed of our success. We were successful in obtaining 15 million to establish a chair on sustainable development, zero-waste technology for the oil palm industry at UKM. The palm oil industry is a key driver for rural development in Malaysia, and it generates approximately 40 billion revenue annually. A key factor for UKM's success was that the chair had the mission of attaining zero waste. No pollutants going to the air, no pollutants to the ground, no pollutants go to the water. This turns palm oil mills into green, carbon-neutral factories with zero discharge, ensuring productivity and sustainability of the palm oil industry. Arno, you'll be pleased to know that the first chairholder was from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, Dr. Klassen. After these successes, we won the confidence and trust of the academics in the university. We now had no problem creating the culture change needed and implementing plans for industry and community engagement across the university. We had them coming to us now to ask us for help. I now would like to share with you the key factors for successful partnerships based on the previous experiences, some of which you have already heard in the course of the day. The first is awareness of power possession in partnerships. If universities are working with organizations that provide significant funding, then the power rests more with the organization than with the university. That's a fact of life. In this context, learning to build and negotiate power when it appears unequal is essential to successful partnerships. You must sometimes learn how to eat humble pie, very often, in fact. This includes shaping a large, compelling vision, recognizing power resources, learning how to incorporate different sources of knowledge, and creating a process for shared meaning-making. Secondly, acquisition of political skills. Collaborative work, especially work that crosses academic and industry and community cultures, requires a set of political skills that can be learned by faculty and non-faculty. Soft political skills are the ability to build connections with other people. For this to develop, there must be honesty, genuine sharing of knowledge, and transparency with regards both our needs. From my experience, there are some academics, it's best that you leave them working in the labs. You don't need to have them interact with the stakeholders. But there are some academics who have these qualities and have the ability to go out and reach out to them. You identify them for your university. They will be your great ambassadors and you work with them. All of this takes time and would require the process to engage, understand, and respond to the concerns of both parties. The need for strong and humble leadership. There needs to be strong and humble leadership from both organizations to help maneuver through the challenging situations that may arise as a result of conflict of different personalities. In any environment, there are always those with big egos. Our first meeting, after we had the endowed chair, involved researchers from both the Chemical Engineering Department at UKM and the researchers from the Sime Darby Research Center, and was a little explosive. This was because egos came to the forefront, and there was a need amongst members of both organizations, all males, to demonstrate possession of greater knowledge expertise over the other. It required firm leadership from both organizations to calm matters and to clearly lay out roles and responsibilities. Leaders should not delegate and abdicate. I had the opportunity to visit the UK and met with the late Sir David Watson, who was then the Vice Chancellor of the University of Brighton, and who drove civic and community engagement at Brighton, a great man. His advice to me was this: in this area of forging partnerships more than any other, was not to adopt a philosophy of delegating and abdicating. You need to see the process of developing partnerships with external stakeholders through until they are ready to be implemented by the respective offices with clear guidelines, roles and responsibilities, and outcomes delineated. At various forums that we have attended, we have always been asked by various universities to share the knowledge and experience that we have gained over the years. We then felt it was valuable to create the multiplier effect through a regional platform. This regional platform, called Asia Engage, was a powerful collaboration to engage across ASEAN and Asia. This was largely made possible because we had gained the confidence and trust of many international organizations. The first secretariat, the ASEAN Talwa Network of Industry and Community Engaged Universities, was a collaboration with the Talwa Network, if you've heard of it, based in the Tufts University in America. The second secretariat was for the ASEAN University Network. ASEAN University Network is based in Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, and they invited universities to bid to set up a secretariat for the thematic network of university social responsibility and sustainability. So we won the bid. Subsequently, the ASEAN Secretariat, which is an intergovernmental body based in Jakarta, approached UKM to lead in the development and implementation of the ASEAN Youth Volunteer Program. So it's made up of 2 secretariats and a program. So through Asia Engage, we have identified experts and have carried out capacity building workshops to develop competencies for successful partnerships, effective fund generation, and other areas. We have shared best practices at regional conferences that have been held in Indonesia, in the Philippines recently, and the next one in Chiang Mai, Thailand, next year. I would like to share a good practice in engaging communities through research with all of you. This innovative modality was presented by Dr. Silapon Boizai, then the Deputy Director of the Thailand Research Fund. The modality is known as ABR, or Area-Based Collaborative Research, which promotes the role of universities in local development. In Thailand, there was great demoralization of the way government was actually helping the poor. So many universities stepped into the picture to try and work on this, including the Thailand Research Fund. So one of the main examples is the Project for Poverty Alleviation, which is the nation's largest action research project involving over 40,000 people from government offices, NGOs, academics, and community, and spanning 17 of Thailand's 77 provinces. The modality works towards community empowerment and poverty alleviation through a bottom-up planning model, budgetary integration, and change in knowledge culture. I'll just share the example with you. This took place in Phitsanulok, which is a northern province, some 400 kilometers north of Bangkok. They introduced a household account as a tool to help villagers realize about their debt situation and its causes. At first, the villagers resisted. They argued that many agencies had come before and had asked them to record their income and expenditure, but nothing had changed. However, through this strategic research design, they incorporated multiple stakeholders in the village fora where data from household accounts could be compiled and hence brought certain type of expenditure to local attention. Villagers became aware of common problems, and through the fora, they gradually came to see the root cause of their debt. That is the lack of good farm planning and management. The inability to control cost for their farm production was very typical amongst villagers. Some farmers confessed, after seeing their maize production cost, that they could see that if they went on growing maize, their debt would pile up even before they started planting the maize. So they changed. They started looking for alternative crops. Some changed to growing passion fruits, some to flowers. Overall, most of the farmers joining this project could relieve their debt burden within 3 years. Another example comes from the ASEAN Youth Volunteer Program. The first program was on the development of ASEAN eco-leaders through community and industry engagement. This is a 5-week program, but it does not end at 5 weeks. Given that the demand for this program was so great, we only had 100 places for youth across the 10 ASEAN countries, and we had 1,500 applications. So we felt, therefore, it was important for the youth who were selected to go back to their home countries to be able to share their experiences and share their knowledge with youth in their home countries. So they conducted in-country projects in the respective countries that they returned to. And this will create the multiplier effect across ASEAN. As they developed their effective proposals to implement projects in their home countries, they worked it out. You could see that their projects demonstrated leadership and the ability to utilize the knowledge and the experience gained through the program. And they also demonstrated the ability to reach out to partners, to work collaboratively and obtain funding. I'll just share this one with you. This is by Bambang Sutrisno from Indonesia, and it's called Teens Go Green Jakarta. The project inspires young people on adopting biodiversity and green lifestyle issues through the concept of edutainment. And if you look at the column on the left, for one person who's attended the program, he went home, and just for his initial program, he already impacted on 80 other youth in Jakarta. He had so many multi-stakeholders that he was able to reach out to. So the earlier we teach these skills to our young, the easier it will be for them when they get to positions where they have to deal with stakeholders, multiple partners, and establish multiple partners. The total sponsorship that he managed to raise was USD 13,600, which is quite admirable. And this is just one. This replicates many other youth who have also gone back and established in-country projects. And we provide a seed funding of USD 2,000. All these programs, the ASEAN Youth Volunteer Programs, were supported by US aid. And I must mention that because it enabled us to do so much for the youth of ASEAN. This is the impact and outreach of the ASEAN Youth Volunteer Program across ASEAN. We had 19 in-country projects, and this is just over a year. So over almost 2,000 volunteers and 106 partners. The nature of collaborative relationships between university, industry, and community are limited only by the degree of our imagination. The matching of common interests, and the willingness to plan and to work hard at implementing the opportunities. There are no shortcuts. Universities, industries, and communities have a wealth of intellectual capital and expertise we need to learn from and collaborate with each other. I would like to end with a quotation from the former President of India, Abdul Kalam. His key message at a Beijing forum that I was privileged to attend was this, where he said, "We need to work on global platforms made up of a network of universities, private sector, and communities, researching and synergizing core competencies to find knowledge-driven solutions in a multinational manner." His message provides the much-needed affirmation and validation of all that we have worked on in the ASEAN region and Asia, and will continue to work on for the future with other countries, and we look forward to reaching out to Australia and beyond. Good luck to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for all the initiatives that you might plan when you get home to your home universities. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Saran. What I love about what you've just brought to us is a reminder that that engagement in industry, university engagement and innovation is not always tech-driven, and it's not always science-driven or commercialisation-driven. There's social entrepreneurship as well. I wondered if you would like to comment a little bit on your experience of whether in universities you find these two things are separated, or whether they're coming together more closely these days. Certainly entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial mindset, and lean startup is very much the flavour in Australia, I think globally at the moment. So perhaps a comment from you on that score.
I'll speak of when I was Deputy Vice Chancellor for 7 years, because it wouldn't be fair for me to speak about maybe what changes may have taken place now. But during that period, we worked very hard at ensuring that there was a symbiotic relationship between industry and community engagement. And within the promotional criteria, we worked out clear recognition and awareness for both. And even more recognition when you worked on community engagement, say, and you were able to bring an industry partner on board. Because we had programs, we started modalities where we encouraged academics to go out. Before I share that with you, some academics are more naturally inclined towards community engagement. Some academics are more naturally inclined towards tech development and industry engagement. And sometimes you can't force the two. But there are many occasions where you can encourage them to see the value of what work they're doing and how it relates to the other, which is why in the title it is both industry and community engagement. Just to share one particular program that we started with the academics to encourage them, we just provided them with seed funding. They had to go out to look for partners, they had to work out proposals, basically all the steps that I went through in my presentation, and before we even provided the seed funding, they had to be able to show us that they either had an industry partner or an NGO partner or a government office to be able to work with them to enhance a particular community. So we do all of that as well. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Saran. That was wonderful. And for a 5:30 keynote, I looked around and no one was nodding off.
Thank you.
I think also you have such a dulcet tone. It was beautiful. I was really interested in, you were like a startup, and I think so many startups could take lessons from you. You had no money, but you scaled up, and that's clearly tenacity and that leadership that you talked about. So when you said sanctuary, that's all messy and political, and it would have been tough. So from a leadership perspective, where were you going for your sanctuary? Where were you getting guidance or mentoring, or what was your lesson? Because you need that as you build businesses or build collaboration.
Yeah, you have to have, it was tough. It was, the 7 years were rewarding, but extremely challenging. I can count on my fingers, because you can't trust everybody. I can count on my fingers the people I could trust. And they all came, and they were all my very good Malay friends who were academics. You know, Professor Sharifa Mastura, Professor Mazuki, the Dean of Faculty of Engineering, and all those in engineering. Because once you've done something for them, they just come on board and love you. It's not a problem anymore. But where there were moments where you really need to discuss issues of decision making, it was the core group that I would go to. Yeah. And you need to have that. And they're made up of both male and female. You know who you can trust. Yeah.